Hi everyone, this is the Chrissy B Show, a programme aimed at looking after our mental health and well-being. A few months ago we did a show titled Against All Odds, and our newsreader Helena Schott spoke about a man who'd been through hell in his childhood but managed to turn things around to be a success in life. His story begins when he was dumped in some rubbish bins at just 2 weeks old. Let's take a look at this.
A lovely one as well, Paul Connolly. This is a really inspiring one, I feel anyway. Against all odds, he rose to success, and he had, well, at 2 weeks old, he was found in a rubbish bin. His mum had chucked him away. He was brought up in a convent until the age of 8. He then moved to St Leonard's Children's Home in Tower Hamlets, which was a really life-changing move for him, not for the better at all. Because unfortunately, from principal down, it was run by a paedophile ring.
Oh, goodness.
So you can imagine.
Yeah.
So his childhood was violence and mental torture. It was just awful, and just so sad in that even in their 20s, everyone from his dorm, apart from him and one other, had committed suicide.
Oh,
so sad, isn't it?
It's awful.
Anyway, so he, ploughed on. He joined a boxing club, funnily enough, at 9. Where he did meet a very good group of guys who were male influence, so really good mentors. And he was great at boxing. He thought that was going to be his career, but due to an illness, he couldn't do that. But he mixed it up with something else, because he was the first person to bring box aerobics to London. And he's now an incredibly successful celebrity fitness instructor. And he's worked with Elle Macpherson and Christopher Reeve. And one thing that's so lovely, he's also a best-selling author, because I think one of his books is called, or his book is Against All Odds.
Oh, is it? Wow.
And he learned to read and write when he was 25. So, I mean, it's amazing to then write a book. Yeah,
See, it's never too late.
Never too late, which is lovely.
So thanks to Helena, we decided to invite Paul Connolly on the show today to hear the story from the horse's mouth. But before we meet him, let me tell you what else we have on the show today. We'll be starting off with some news with Helena, and also I'll be sharing some tips on how to overcome childhood trauma. But first, let's go to the news. Welcome to the show, Helena.
Thank you, Chrissy.
And I want to thank you actually for hooking us up with our guest today.
So excited.
Yeah.
It's really, really great. So beginning with swimmer Steph Millward, who's 34 now, so she has won her battles. And good for her, she's won a gold medal at Rio.
Yes.
So really pleased, and she's also broken a world record, so fantastic for her. The thing about her is that she was diagnosed with MS when she was a teenager, which she was distraught about, and she was told by about 22 she would be in a wheelchair, to give up swimming, everything was against her. But she carried on, and she's done incredibly well, so good for her. And she also wrote a poem called MS My War, so she feels that she's achieved so much, talking about how she keeps striving to win her war, and obviously winning the gold medal meant so much for her. And it was really lovely the way she was talking about, even if there's no cure to what you have, a private battle, just keep fighting. It doesn't matter what you achieve and at what age, just go for it. So yeah, really, really great. And also another thing which I was reading about today, that there's a blind photographer, well, not completely blind, slight impairment, and he's taking lots of wonderful pictures at the Olympics at the minute. He can see a metre in front of him. So he uses the movement and sound and colour, and he's got some amazing pictures. Jay Mayo, his name is, so really nice. Love that, it was lovely. So talking about some celebrities as well who have been through their own battles and have done well. Nicki Minaj, I sort of knew certain things. She's a rapper, but she had a very abusive childhood, a father who was a drug addict, and she used to live in fear of him killing her mum. All the time. Anyway, so that's something that she always remembers, but she's done incredibly well. Christina Aguilera as well. She, again, a violent father, and music was her escapism. He always used to attack her when she was singing and things, but she got through it. That was her outlet. And that's how she did so well. It's amazing how you can have a twist. Charlize Theron as well, I think we've spoken about her before, but just to say, I mean, she's a great actress, has done incredibly well, but she witnessed her mother actually shoot her father. It was in self-defense, but I mean, again, very traumatic. Moving on again, this is Olympics. So Hannah Cockcroft, she's 23, a very funny lady actually. She's got an MBE, which she got in 2013, but she's won 2 golds. Again, she suffered 2 cardiac arrests when she was younger, damaged 2 different parts of her brain. You know, we're told that she wouldn't be able to do anything, and there she is at the Olympics winning all these golds.
I just love that fighting spirit.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
And really, it's such a great spokeswoman as well, really quite funny. She has a phobia of fish. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I just thought I'd add that one in. I've got some stories that I'm going to actually move on to. So again, something that we hear in the news all the time now, but at least there is some relief for Syrian children who are traumatised by war. And it's so sad when you see these children, they're just completely shocked and traumatised onto those pictures, suffering from various things, even ADHD, and it's heart-rending, isn't it? But there's so many different traumas. But Sarah Jalloudi, who's a psychologist with Medical Corps, was estimating that 3/4 of refugees, possibly more, need mental help, some treatment. And apparently there was a 2013 survey done by the Save the Children Foundation, and half of all Syrian teenagers, possibly more in Lebanon, had contemplated suicide.
Oh,
so
really?
it's just, but all the things, depression, suicidal tendencies, anxiety, ADHD, self-imposed isolation. I mean, it goes on and on. So they still really, really need help. But great that things are turning around. Rihanna, she had quite a child abusive father again, who was a crack cocaine addict, very, very abusive towards her mother. But funny enough, she says that they had an estrangement, and as awful as he was to her mum, he was the most amazing father. So it's strange, very strange.
And it was very confusing for a child as well.
Yeah, and we've got lots more. A little more time?
I think we've run out of time.
Have we? Okay, we've got a few more stories, but for next time.
Yeah, keep them for next time.
We'll do.
Inspiring ones. Thank you so much, Helena.
Thank you,
see
Chrissy.
you again very soon. All right, guys, so now it's time to speak to our very special guest for today, and that's Paul Connolly. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you on. And you've got quite a story, so we're going to try and get through as much as possible today. But the reason that you're here today is actually to show the public that you can have a happy life, you can live again, even if you've been through absolute hell as a child.
Yeah.
So you didn't start off very well at all, did you? Even at 2 weeks, something happened to you?
No, I was the last of 8 children, Irish Catholic family. I was the 7th boy and 1 girl, and I was the youngest. Yeah. And my mum put all of her siblings in care at one time or another. But I was put out with the rubbish at 2 weeks old. My mum just had some sort of breakdown, and she put me out with the bins, and somebody called social services, and I was taken in and brought up by nuns and nurses till I was 7 in a convent.
Mm.
Do you have memories of that?
The convent with the nuns and the nurses, yeah, because I went there from 2 weeks old, so I do have memories of that, yeah. I do. Not terrible memories, because it got worse as I got older.
Okay. So compared to what?
Compared to what happened as I got older, yeah. I mean, the nuns were, they were, very strict, and some of them were violent, but it wasn't abusive children's home as the one was that I went to. And when I got to 8, I had to go to the big boys' children's home. So that was what, unfortunately, that children's home was run by a paedophile ring. And it was 1970 I went to that children's home, just before my 8th birthday.
Do you remember your first day there?
I remember my first evening, yeah. Most children in care wet the bed because they're very insecure, and I've gone to a brand new children's home with 300 kids, and I was
300.
And I was just coming up from my 8th birthday, so I wet the bed, and then my house mother, because these were individual units in a massive children's home, London Borough, Tower Hamlets, East London, and they were individually staffed, but you had what was called a house father and a house mother. My house mother dragged me out of bed in the morning, threw the wet bed sheets and me in the bath with bleach and scrubbed me till I bled, and said, this is what happens when little boys wet themselves. So that was my introduction to that children's home. Yeah, that was my caring house mother, and we don't allow you to wet the bed here.
But obviously that would make a child do it more, right?
Yeah,
because
of course.
that's so...
Yeah. I mean, you imagine at 7 years old, you're going into a dormitory with 12 other children you don't know, and in a massive building where you're alone in the world anyway, and you're just looking for some kind of security, and that's your first introduction. Her husband, who was convicted of child abuse and at the Old Bailey, he used to beat me on a daily basis and enjoy himself quite often. And she gave me the mental torture, he gave me the physical torture, and then obviously
And obviously she knew what was going on?
Oh, everybody knew what was going on, yeah. It was a regular occurrence.
So it was the whole...
Yeah, I mean, I'd followed my brothers, and so I was the last one. So she used to say to me, you're a Connolly, you're going to end up in prison or dead. If you were normal, you wouldn't be here. If you were a normal person, you'd have a normal, loving family. You're going to be in prison or dead by the time, which nearly came true, actually. It was self-fulfilling. By the time, you're 20, you'll be in prison or dead. And she was nearly right.
We're going to get to that, but thank goodness that didn't happen. But these things that used to happen in the children's home, was it like a daily? It was a daily occurrence,
yeah. I was very lucky in some respects, because by the time I'd gone to that children's home, I'd sort of established myself. I knew who I was, funnily enough, because my subconscious had sort of, the environment I was in up until I was 7 wasn't horrendous. It wasn't terrible. I was on my own, and I was brought up by nuns and nurses, but I wasn't being daily beaten, and people weren't trying to bugger me on a daily basis. So, but when I went to this children's home, it was unfortunately the boys I grew up with, mainly sort of Afro-Caribbean, African and Irish, they were in there from a much younger age, so they were really in a bad way. I'd gone there and known some good stuff in life before I'd gone there, at least not abuse, which stood me in good stead. I think that's why I'm still here, because I'd established myself as, my subconscious had sort of taken on that not everything in the world is bad, and this is bad, but I can get through this.
So you knew, obviously, because sometimes when children are abused from a very young age, I mean, I've spoken to people on this programme where they say they actually thought it was normal because that's all they knew, even though they felt they hated it, but they thought, well, this is what happens. But it's only when they got older and they're in a different environment when they actually realised they've been abused.
I knew it wasn't normal, yeah.
Yeah, that must have been even scarier.
Well, when they used to raid the dormitories at night, and by the time I was 8, I had a kitchen knife under my pillow, because if you had a knife and you fought, then you would be less likely to be buggered. If you just let them, they would abuse you, they'd bugger you. If you were a victim, you would be a victim. So they went for the easier prey. So I learned very early on that you need a knife, and I stole a knife out of kitchens, and they knew that possibly I could have a knife, so you'd watch them drag other kids out that were weaker, so that they wouldn't try and stab them. They were just like going for the easier prey.
That's awful.
Yeah.
God. What was your worst memory there?
So many, it's hard to say. It wasn't necessarily physical beatings. You get used to that. You get used to being clumped, and I'd ribs broke and I was thrown downstairs, and those things were quite normal. They were daily occurrences. The mental torture is like a drip effect on you, your self-esteem, on who you are and where you come from. That actually has a much worse effect on you as a person when people tell you, you're a piece of this, you're no good, and you feel like it doesn't matter. I mean, the things I've achieved now, I still don't process them. I still don't feel that I'm any good, no matter what I do, and I've raised hundreds of thousands of pounds for charities, and it doesn't matter what I do now, I still don't feel like, I don't think I ever will, I don't feel like I'm worthy of anything. So it stays with you, and I'm 54, and I think I'd have got over it by now, but no, I mean, I think the worst thing is neglect, because when people talk about abuse, they talk about like mental torture, physical abuse, sexual abuse. They talk about like these physical and mental things. What they don't talk about is you're unloved, you're alone.
Yeah.
Nobody cares what happens to you. And the total neglect. I couldn't read and write. I'm a best-selling author who couldn't read and write till he was 25. I had to go back to night school. I still struggle with it now. You know, the neglect. I had no sense of who I was, no sense of culture, no sense of, you know, no identity. I had no, you know, I knew probably from that age that I was totally alone in the world. It doesn't matter what happens to me, nobody cares. And that
must be such a frightening thing
that loneliness,
for a child.
yeah, that loneliness is pain. It's just, that's some greater physical pain than anyone. I've been stabbed, I've been shot, I've been bitten, and that loneliness, that's a greater pain than any of those things. That pain is far deeper, and those scars never go, because if you're alone in the world and nobody cares, I mean, not many people go through, lots of people go through that, but you know, so-called normal people don't ever go through that. Imagine feeling, I think it was as young as 3 or 4, I knew I was on my own and nobody cared. Obviously, one of my saving graces was that I was quite very personable, and I knew how, and I liked people, so people did start to care about me because I was likeable, you know.
Hold it there, Paul, because we're going to go to a quick break. I'm quite speechless, to be honest, because this is really difficult to listen to. But you know, as I've said, the reason we are doing this is because you have achieved so much in your life, and it's just because we want you guys at home to know. I know there's many of you watching now that you've been through stuff, and maybe you've never ever spoken about it. You've never felt comfortable to open up. You feel like you're rubbish. You know, you're going through so many things, and you're even thinking of ending it all. And actually, we're going to speak about the other boys in your dorm that did actually end their lives. But this show is and Paul is here today to actually say to you that life is worth living. There is life after abuse. So join us after this. Welcome back to today's programme, everyone, and we are doing a Chrissy B Show special today because we have Paul Connolly with us, and he's been telling us about the horrific abuse that he endured, not just him actually, and many other children endured in a children's home. Some of the things really difficult to listen to, and I know you're doing a great job telling us your story. I know it must be really hard, Paul, but you were telling us earlier about the mental torture as well, because I asked you what the worst thing was, and it was the mental being put down all the time, feeling alone, which I know a lot of people do feel that way. Yeah. But Taz, how long did you endure all of that abuse?
12 years. I was 12 years in that particular children's home. Yeah, I left there when I was 19, coming up to 20. Yeah, I was the woman that mentally tortured me every day. My house mother. She can't be mentioned for legal reasons because she was never convicted.
Really?
It's very hard to convict a woman of mental torture or sexual abuse, but her husband got 14 years. So the woman who mentally tortured me, I threw a table at her eventually, and I was asked to leave. So I was 19. So I think it was 11 years. It's funny because people abuse you your whole life, mentally, you know, and physically, and they neglect you and everything else. But you still feel an attachment to them. I then had to go out into the world on my own. And I had to go and find a bedsit and make my way in the world on my own with no help at all. And I work with Lord Listerwell now, helping care leavers introduce themselves into the world, because I know how that feels, just being...
So even though like you were going through so much there, but at the same time, the thought, I mean, people sort of watching this now will think, my God, it's like, why couldn't you wait to get away kind of thing?
Yeah,
but
it's
then
funny.
The next stage is also, because change is scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't want to leave a man who he stopped beating me when I was about 15 because I was
going to ask you that. Did it kind of stop
what
as you got
happened
older?
was I got into boxing. Me and my best friend used to walk past the local boxing club, and we went in there one day, and the boxing coaches said, "Blimey, what are you, 9 or 10?" And we were 12, you know, because we were tiny. They starved us. They used to steal the money from the budget, and we got next to nothing to eat.
Really?
So they robbed. Yeah, so we were always hungry. And then what happened was the boxing coaches took us under their wings, and their wives used to bring us food up.
Yeah. So while you were in the home, you were allowed out to go?
We used to go to the boxing club, yeah. We used to walk to school 4 or 5 miles every day, save the bus fare and go past the boxing club. So then one day we went into the boxing club and we thought, we had a lot of mistrust, and we said, well, we can always run. But these guys were the first male adults that weren't trying to beat us up or bugger us. So. And I wasn't that interested in boxing, but because somebody was feeding me and somebody was showing me some attention, I excelled. I became an amateur boxing champion and a pro fighter.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and these guys were, for want of better words, some of the boxing coaches were a bit rough and ready. They were sort of gangsters and people like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, unfortunately, they were my prodigies. That's how I ended up in that world myself.
Paul, did you ever tell anyone, you know, since you had now contact with people that you could see were, okay, even though they had their faults, but still they were trustworthy, they weren't trying to abuse you or anything. Yeah. They had good hearts, basically. Did you ever feel like you could open up to anyone and tell them what was going on in the home?
Yeah, what happened was I turned up really badly beaten one day at the boxing club, and it was mainly like broken ribs and things like that, and I was quite badly beaten. And Liam, my best friend growing up, he told the coach, and they wanted to have a look at me, and I wouldn't take my top off. And the wives came in and they had a look at me, and so they actually went up to protect me. They went to the children's home and they told them, if he ever comes back here like this, they're coming after them. So that was around about 12, 13, and the beating stopped then. The beating stopped then because these people were naughty people, and the bullies didn't want them coming down because they said they were going to come and shoot them. And then it was the first time I had someone looking out for me.
How did that feel?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
I can imagine after so many years of feeling like no one cared. Well, at the time, no one did care.
No. It was tough.
Yeah, I can imagine. You're doing great, Paul. Okay. So finally, there's someone that's looking out for you. And then, did you continue after you left the...
Yeah.
You can have a supporter, though.
I ended up, yeah.
You can stop talking for me just to take a sip. Okay.
I ended up coaching the kids myself, and I ended up sort of going the full circle.
Okay.
And I became a trainer myself, and...
what was that like?
Yeah, it was good. It was like, you know, giving something back. But these people were, you know, they might have been rough around the edges, but they had good hearts, you know. They, you know. But it's, you know, it was quite unique because, you know, you don't realise there are decent people out there when you grow up like that.
Yeah.
So it's a revelation.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if that's all you've known, and then you meet people that do care for you and do look out for you and actually watch your back. Yeah. That must be such an amazing feeling after everything that you've been through.
The wives used to bring food up for us, and it's really funny because I don't think I'd have been a violent person if I'd have grown up differently. I think I'm quite sensitive, but I was extremely violent, and I was extremely angry.
Well, it's the way you were trying to protect yourself, wasn't it, after everything?
Yeah, and then obviously I ended up in that gangster world for a long time.
Tell us about that.
I was very angry, and I was very violent, and my house father was trying to rape a girl one day, and I went into the girls' dormitory, and this girl's married someone quite famous. I won't mention her name, but she's quite a famous person herself. And he was trying to rape her, and she was a stunning girl. Absolutely, she was only about 13, 14 at the time. And he said to me, you know, get out, Connolly. In other words, I said, I'm not going anywhere. I said, you ain't raping her. Anyway, he gave me another beating and threw a wardrobe on top of me and left me with this wardrobe. She was trying to get herself dressed and get the wardrobe off of me. And that was the last time I was frightened of being beaten, because I just kept thinking, well, I'm still alive. And then because I started to actually enjoy the pain, I became a doorman, and because I was very angry.
What do you mean you enjoyed the pain?
I enjoyed the pain. I enjoyed knowing that the pain didn't affect me. So then I used to seek violence out. I used to seek people out, and bullies, people that wanted violence. I'd be happy, you know. If you're going to be in a violent confrontation with someone, you look them in the eye and they look you in the eye and they know you're prepared to die, and they're not, you already won. And I was prepared to die. I was happy to die. I had a death wish for years. I was happy to die. And in fact, it would have put me out of my misery. I wanted to be put out of my misery, but I just excelled at the violence and then serious people used me for their violence.
Well, do you think it was also, there was like a root there of not feeling that you were worth anything, so the beating was just like a proof of that as well? Like, it kind of reinforced the idea that you had in your mind that you weren't worth anything anyway, so the beatings just carry on.
It gave me a status. It made me feel people were frightened of me. It made me feel like I was worth something because I could intimidate people.
Okay.
It gave me a status. I walked in a room, people were terrified. And that gave me power, and that gave me status, and I thought that was important at the time. Because the first time I had any status, first time I had any self-belief, because I was prepared to die, and I was prepared to kill anyone who wanted to confront me, and people would be terrified of me, and it made me feel good about myself. It was the first time I felt good about myself. I was taught how to fight, and then I used it in the wrong way.
But though you say you felt good about yourself, but deep down.
No, deep down I didn't.
What was going on deep down?
Deep down, I mean, I feel it now.
That you wanted
the guilt is
die.
The people I've hurt. I feel terrible now. That's why I do.
Did you at the time when you do those?
I think at the time.
Because it wasn't naturally you. That was the result of the circumstances.
Between the ages of probably 25 and 35, when I was extremely violent, it felt. I felt like it was justified in what I was doing. Because the people I was hurting were people that were hurting other people. I wasn't hurting innocent people. Yeah. I was hurting people that, drugs and gangsters, and I was hurting people that were quite happy to hurt me and to hurt anyone else. So the people that, but at the same time, even today now, I don't feel like I'm a good person. I feel a lot of guilt for what I've done. So I've done a lot of terrible things, and I have to live with that. So.
But Paul, you need to forgive yourself as well.
Yeah, I've been told that a lot.
You really, seriously, I know a lot of people feel that way because, we all have been through things, obviously some worse than others. But, if you really are going to move on, that has to come first, like to forgive yourself, because you've been through so much and none of that was your fault. You developed habits and roots, you developed habits that are understandable. I'm not saying it was right.
But to actually enjoy physically hurting somebody is not a good thing.
That wasn't you. That was your circumstances, things that you'd been through.
Yeah.
Because deep down, you were a good person. You are a good person.
I mean, it was empowering to do what I did. I was, if you kick a dog enough times, eventually it's going to turn around and bite you. I mean, I was kicked and kicked and kicked. I was terrified.
It's like you had enough.
Yeah, I was bullied.
You had enough. Yeah. You didn't know another outlet to let it out and to try and feel normal. And that's what came out.
What it was I was tired of being frightened. So I would confront everything. Anything that frightened me, I would seek it out, and I would confront it. And I'd say, "Well, come on in, kill me. Let's see what happens." And I would confront it, and I stopped being frightened because I had no fear of anything or anybody because I was frightened. I'd had so many years of being terrified. I was frightened, all the time.
Yeah. I can imagine.
I was sick of being frightened. So I decided no more. I'm not going to be frightened. People are going to be frightened of me. And they were. They were terrified of me. And now I've got to live with that guilt.
Paul, we're going to go to a break. Okay? Because you're amazing to come on and talk about this. I'm really happy that you came to talk about this. But we are going to be telling the viewers the positive things that you've done. And though you still feel guilty and you still, you're kind of beating yourself up in a way still. But let's see the good things that you're doing and the positive things, the people that you're helping now, to see that you can move on and you can change your life around, right?
Yeah, of course.
We'll see you after this. Hi, I'm Chrissy B, and my show is all about improving your mental health and being happy. Join me every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 10 p.m. on my channel Sky 203. Visit chrissybshow.tv for more information and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Chrissy B Show. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chrissy B Show and on our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show. Welcome back to today's program, everyone, and we are interviewing Paul Connolly today. He has such a shocking story and he's on today he's been telling us what he's been through, but also there has been a turnaround in his life and he's going to be telling us actually how he reached that point. So, quite emotional story.
Yeah.
Paul. So there was a point where you did actually want to end it all. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, there's a few. Well, leading up to that, I got arrested on a couple of GBHs. I was attacked by 5 men, and when I was doing the door one night, and I hurt 2 of them quite badly. And I ended up going to Crown Court, and obviously this self-fulfilling prophecy from the people that brought me up was, you're a piece of this and you're going to end up in prison and you're blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So this was coming true because this was predicted for me. And to be fair, it was self-defence and reasonable force, and lucky enough a jury found me to be not guilty and everything. So because as the jury came back in and I thought I was so convinced I was going to prison, and they said not guilty, this was quite a turning point for me, because I thought, well, you know, maybe I'm not as bad as I thought I was, because, you know, I thought I deserved to go to prison and the jury had found me innocent. So that helped me a lot. And then shortly after that, the police knocked on my door, 2 police women, and I didn't answer the door for a while because I thought, oh, it's the police again, you know. Yeah. But then I realised normally when they used to come and get me, they used to surround my house with about 20 policemen and not 2 pretty police women knocking at the door. So I thought, this can't be them coming to get me this time. So I opened the door and they said, you know, are you Paul, we need to talk to you. We're involved in Operation Mapperton, which is a 30 years, an investigation over 30 years of child abuse in your children's home. Can we come in and talk to you? And then they proceeded to tell me that everyone I'd grown up with, almost every, out of a dormitory of 8 boys, 6 of my friends had all committed suicide. Okay. And my best friend had jumped on a railway, had jumped in front of a train at Mile End Station. And obviously it was quite devastating for me.
Was that Liam, the one that used to go to Carol, the boxing club with?
The guy used to come to boxing with me, And he was, you know, he was one of the strongest, toughest kids I knew. And for him to do that, and then I realised obviously later on that these kids were buggered from a very young age, from younger than me, and they were abused from toddlers as young as 2 and 3 years old. So they didn't have any hope really, and they had no education. And obviously, you know, I like to put labels on it. They said Liam was schizophrenic when he jumped in front of a train and all of this nonsense. But he just didn't have a future, and he knew he didn't have a future. He felt he didn't have a future. He did have a future, but he felt he didn't. And obviously this was a major knock for me, and I gave evidence at the Old Bailey against my abusers, and then there was vital video evidence went missing, and 2 of them walked away with only 18 months served. And they walked away, and at that point the anger in me was just, I was the only one left alive. I needed to do something. I decided I was going to kill all 3 of them. The 3 that there was another one who wasn't prosecuted, but I knew I had to kill them all in the same day, otherwise one of them was going to get away. So I stalked them for a little while, got myself a gun, went after them, and it's quite a tough story to tell, but I went in a pub to shoot 2 of them in one day, and I was going to have to get out to Essex to kill the other one. And it's very strange. There was a woman in a pub, and she saw me. I stood with my back to them, and as I pulled the gun out, took the safety off, they were standing. She caught my eye, and she basically was mouthing, "Don't do it." I don't know who she was, and I don't know what happened, but I basically just ran out the pub and I didn't do it. I lost my bottle and I didn't do it. Then I went home and I was devastated, and then I felt like I'd let everyone down, so I shoved a gun in my own mouth, knocked my own teeth out, took the safety off, went to pull the trigger, and I had this cat called Sausage. This cat jumped on the settee and started purring around me and dribbling in my ear, and while I was crying and shaking and spitting teeth out, and I don't know what happened. I think the cat was just purring and dribbling in my ear, and for some reason I just uncocked the gun, and I didn't do it. And then I went and but at the same time I was struggling with it so much. I was go and see this psychiatrist, and every time I went to see him he was trying to convince me, my best mate was trying to convince me not to do it. He was giving me like the movie Sleepers, saying like these guys killed their abusers, but they didn't change as individuals, so they ended up all dead.
It's just like continuing
it on and on and on, yeah. But even to this day I have guilt about not killing them. Even to this day I felt I should have killed them. Part of me feels that way. And that's how we got to the books, because people said to me, like, you need to write a book, you need to get the information out there, you need to have a positive revenge as opposed to a negative revenge. And the paedophiles that were convicted, I was able to name them and shame them in my books, and and I was able to tell the whole story.
So you've written the first one you wrote, Paul.
The first book became
Against All Odds,
Against
and
All Odds.
that's a photo of you.
That's me on the front.
On the front, yeah.
And that sold. Yeah. That's now sold up to 600,000 copies.
Yeah.
It's gone crazy. It was the first bestseller on the Kindle. Went to #1 outselling. Girl with a Dragon Tattoo outsold all the top Hollywood movies. It was #1. It was the first bestseller on the Kindle, Amazon. And the second.
Well, you see, when this was happening, because obviously you said you felt guilty for not killing them, but then obviously that was a very negative outlet. That wouldn't have made you feel any better.
No, I know that now. Yeah.
And but having written this now and telling your story and being able to reveal really what happened in detail and to, like you said, name and shame certain people, did you see how much more obviously positive this was, and did you feel
that book's
better
propelled
for it?
me? I mean, I'm public speaking now. The things that book has done for me are unbelievable. I acted as advisor to Lord Listerwell in child protection. I work with various charities. I've raised hundreds of thousands of pounds. I'm on the speaking circuit. I work with kids in special needs school. I work with boxing clubs. And that book, I gave a speech in the House of Lords last summer. That book has put me in places I could never have gone. I could never have got to. And people who are involved in charities read the book and they ask me to come and speak for their various charities and to raise awareness for Beanstalk, for instance, a children's literature charity. Yeah. I've raised 200 grand for them in one event.
Oh, by the way, so you said you didn't learn to write until you were 25?
Yeah, I was illiterate until I was in my early 20s. Yeah, because we didn't go to school. We used to bunk off and stuff. I couldn't read and write until I was in my mid-20s, so I had to go back to school and learn to read and write, and to be able to educate myself.
What was that like, going back?
It was tough. It was tough because you feel a bit stupid at 20, 22, 23, going into a classroom, not literally being able to. When I was writing my second book, my son helped me spell. There was a really interesting thing. I used to shout out to my wife every time I needed to spell something, and one day she couldn't hear me, and I shouted out to my son Harley. I said, "Can you help me spell?" And he come round and he put his arm around me and he was telling me how to spell things. And he was more like the father. He was like the dad, and I was like the child. And it was, and I just sat there crying at one point because it was, it was really emotional. Because he's educated.
Yeah. But you didn't have those opportunities.
No.
You didn't have. But the great thing was, Paul, that you did actually go back, and even though you felt awkward and it was difficult for you, but the fact is you had that inner strength and you pushed yourself and you went back and you studied, and that in itself is absolutely amazing. And that is actually great for people watching, adults watching, that you didn't get the opportunity, or for whatever reason you can't read or you can't write, that it can be done no matter what age. What
people don't take into account about education is not necessarily it's nothing to do with intelligence. It's a very different thing. It's nothing to do with emotional intelligence either. Some people have got people who are not necessarily educated can be very intelligent, and can be also have very high EQs, and be great with people. And I think that's been my saving grace, is that I've always loved people. And
you're very chatty and you express yourself really well.
Don't shut up.
No, that's good. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. See, everyone has, like you're saying, it's not about going to school or anything. You're an intelligent being.
Yeah, intelligence is you're born with that.
Yeah,
it's in you. And if you haven't got intelligence, you'll have. I think emotional intelligence, social skills, someone who knows how to be charismatic, someone who can turn on charm. These are gifts. We've all got different gifts, and we have to know what our gifts are, and you have to know how to use them.
Is that what you share with people, like when?
Yeah, and when I work with children, and you show them their gifts. You show them their gifts because they don't know they've got the gifts, and you say, "This is your gift. Look, I'll show you what you can do." And you teach them, and you say, "Look at me. Look at me in the eye." And you look at me in the eye, and they look you in the eye, and you say, "Look, you got that twinkle in your eye. You're a good-looking kid. Look at you. You know what you could achieve." And you just tell them, and straight away, it doesn't take you very long to be with a child to know what their gifts are, and everybody's got them.
And I suppose, Paul, because you can do that maybe better than most, because you used to hear the negative words all the time, and you know what impact that had on you, and now you know what power words have. and now you can give that positivity to...
Well, there's a special needs school near where I live, and they asked me to come in to talk to the boys. It's all boys, and the head teacher read my book, and they read it in their curriculum. They're reading the book as part of their curriculum. Really? It's turning the children's behaviour around. Wow. And they said, will you come in and you know, do Q&As and give the speech to the boys in the assembly? I was more nervous giving a speech in that special needs school than I was in the House of Lords. Really? Because they're more important.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. Paul, tell us, actually, you skipped a little bit of your story, because I want to know how you met your wife and everything.
My wife, I think...
I like the love stories as well.
Yeah, my wife's been my saving grace. I've been my wife for like 14, 15 years. Okay. She showed me right from wrong. She showed me, you know, when I first met her, I pulled a guy out of his window and I went back in the car in a road rage incident, and it was normal behaviour for me, and I went back to the car and she was hyperventilating into a paper bag, and she said, you can't behave like that, and she said, like, this is not the real world. And and you know, I mean, I'm almost like an alcoholic. I've been violent free since 2000 when I met my wife. I've not, you know, it's like I've been 16 years without violence.
Tell us about the kind of influence, how she's helped you, and
she's her sense of decency and her sense of right and wrong, and you know, you know, if I cuss in front of the children, she will be like, excuse me? And I'm like a child, I'm like, sorry. You know, and she's just like, you don't mess with her, do you know what I mean? And she puts me in my place. Yeah. And
is that nice?
Yeah, I need to be. Yeah. Yeah.
And your kids, tell us about them.
I adore them. I adore them. You're going to get me crying if I talk about my kids.
Oh, sorry. But it's just amazing that you have...
Yeah, Harley's, he's my eldest.
That's him on the front there, or half of him.
He's just come off a set with Tom Hardy. He's got a great acting career. He's just come off, he's just acted in a...
He's gorgeous.
He's just acted in a movie with Tom Hardy. Yeah. And he might be playing me in my movie. Well, part of, that age group, yeah. And the youngest is hilarious. Everybody loves him, Archie. He's a little powerhouse.
How much do they know about your past?
Harley's read my book. He's only 12 and he's read this Against All Odds, very hard hitting, but he got it and he started reading it and I didn't stop him. And he said to me the other day, Dad, it's really hard for me to imagine you as a tough nut because you're such a wimp. He said, I can't, because obviously it's a world he doesn't understand, and he sees me as a gentle person. And he said to me, that's not you, Dad. I don't imagine any of that to be you. You made that stuff up, Dad.
Oh, bless him. What's it like having your family now, like after?
Because
obviously, like, imagine, I'm just picturing that scene where you're about to end it all, and now you have this amazing family. Yeah, I mean, it was never meant for me. I was coming up for my 40th birthday. I was still, you know, I was still Jack the Lad, still had lots of girlfriends, and I was still doing my own thing. And I was a head trainer at a health club, and I bumped into Jo, my wife, and everything changed overnight, literally instantly. Love at first sight?
Yeah, I would say so, for me anyway. I mean, I can't speak for her, but she, you know, she was only 25 and I was 40, and I thought she was a bit young for me, but she told me otherwise.
Paul, we're going to go to a quick break because I want to know more about the great stuff that you're doing. So guys, do join us after this. Welcome back to our show, everyone, and we've been interviewing Paul Connolly today, and now he's going to be telling us about some of the great stuff that he's involved in and how he's actually helping people today. So Paul, tell us.
Yeah, because I was one of the first personal trainers in the City of London, so we're talking about 86, 87, because I'm old, and yes, I was one of the first PTs in the city. And I developed box aerobics, which was the first sort of boxing workout. So I was one of the originators of that. Brought it back from the States. Yeah. I've been working out there with a few people, and ended up making the pilot for the body video with Elle Macpherson. And then I started training quite a few celebrities, which unfortunately I can't name a lot of them because of contractual agreements. In the last sort of 10 years or so, I've got much more into injury rehab. I work with kids with back conditions, well, not just kids, anyway, scoliosis, lumbosis, kyphosis.
How did you get into that?
Fell into it really because I'm a specialist conditioning coach. A friend of mine's girlfriend had scoliosis and he asked me to help them. And she was going to a clinic that was doing all the wrong stuff, I'm afraid. There's a lot of people that think they know what they're doing. So I'm very instinctive, hands-on, and I do a lot of deep tissue massage, myofascial release, and also I recondition people's bodies. So where I'm lucky, I can rebalance people's bodies in the gym and treat them at the same time. So I can do all the release techniques and all the sports massage, get them out of pain, so the overworked muscles I can release off, and the muscles that are not firing, that are being lazy, forcing the other muscles to overwork, I can fire them in the gym and I can balance their body, put it simply.
Wow.
So I've had sort of major results now. I've had 9 operations cancelled for people with scoliosis.
Really?
Yeah, where they all had, and they've all been in back braces, they've all been in pain.
Yeah.
Usain Bolt has scoliosis.
Does
Fastest
he?
man in the world. Yeah, he didn't have an operation. Because once they have an operation, your back's fused, and the operation is 80% aesthetic. So it doesn't get you out of pain, it doesn't build the musculature, it doesn't balance your back, it doesn't do any of those things. So, you know, you don't have to, you know, they've been treating scoliosis the same way for generations, and we know so much more now. Because there's been an education explosion in the fitness industry. So specialist conditioning coaches, people know about functional training, plyometrics. You know, we understand the deeper muscles to the skeleton are much more functional. We know it. So whereas a surgeon will just have that, we've got this. You see. So I work with the British.
That's fascinating.
I've been working with the Ludlow, not the Ludlow. David Sage, who we used to work with the Ludlow Clinic, and they're all work with the British Olympic athletes. I had a young lad come to me. He's a professional football player. I can't mention the teams because they said he had a stress fracture in his back. He didn't. I found out what was the problem. I righted that. So they offered me a job, one of the Premiership clubs, because I mean, I'm very hands-on. I'm very instinctive. I just seem to find the problems and be able to sort them out. But it's a three-pronged attack: the diet, the nutrition, making sure the body's getting the repair that it needs, but also rebalancing the back and reconditioning the back, and then treating the people for their pain and releasing off all the pain areas and then homework. And so I love it. It's basically what most of what I do.
What's it feel like, just being able to help someone in that way and just fix their back?
It's amazing. You know, my latest little girl.
See all these talents that he had, and he thought,
yeah, this is what I try.
When people tell you that you're not going to amount to anything, you're not going to make it in life, it's all lies.
Yeah, we've all
absolute lies.
We've all got talent. Everybody's got talent.
Yeah.
Some people go their whole life without knowing what it is.
Yeah.
You know, and some people.
And that's what you know until now. You've got loads more that you don't even know about yet.
Absolutely. But it's when you speak to children and that light bulb moment when they go, blimey, he's right, I can do this. You know, that's amazing. Well, my latest one is Daisy. She's only 6. And she was told she needed an operation. They've just cancelled her operation.
Oh, wow.
So she's, So, you know, it's really fulfilling, the rehab and that kind of work.
What are your future plans, Paul?
We had a meeting today, funny enough. We're going to make a movie.
It's exciting.
We're making a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a short movie to start with to get the funding for the big movie. But I had a meeting today with the money people and the production. We put together our own production company. Yeah. And it's all going ahead, and it's really exciting. The meeting today I'm buzzing. It's really, brilliant. So my story's going to be made into a movie.
That's amazing.
And because there's so many facets to it, it goes everywhere, and it speaks volumes to so many different people, and hopefully it'll inspire a lot of people to look into themselves, because it's just such a waste. The talent that people have, and even as a child, when you're told you're no good and you're rubbish and you can't do this and you can't do that, or you're just neglected. I mean, neglect is one of the most underestimated forms of abuse.
That's true.
People never talk about neglect. And and if you're neglected, you're unloved. And if you're unloved, you're lonely. And if you're lonely, you're in pain all the time. Yeah. So, just by showing an interest in someone, you can change their life.
Yeah, that's enough to... like you said, completely turn their lives around. Exactly. Just like to end on something, Paul, if there's someone watching now, that maybe it's an adult and they've been through hell and they've been thinking of ending it all, or anyone that's watching that is feeling suicidal because of something that's happened to them, can you look into that camera and just, what would you say to them?
Well, everybody's got individual circumstances, and we've all got, that old saying, we've got our cross to bear. We've all got our cross to bear. But people... there is always a positive, and no matter how much pain you're in, no matter what situation you're in right now, that's temporary. It's temporary. That's a temporary situation. Yeah. You can get yourself out of that. There's always that light at the end of the tunnel. Yes. I had this blind optimism as a child. I'm special. I will get myself out of this. I will do, you know, as you get older, you become more cynical, and we need to go back to being children. We need to have that optimism. We need to know, you know, everybody's got individual talents, you know, and you have something to offer. And you know what, if you're helping somebody and you're giving somebody something, all of a sudden your own value goes up, doesn't it? And you feel so much better about yourself. So stop feeling sorry for yourself. I mean, self-pity, human beings are the only species that feel sorry for themselves. You know, a bird will fall from a branch, frozen to death, dead to the floor without 1 ounce of self-pity. Self-pity is the most destructive emotion. It's one that we can all do without.
Yeah. They can definitely turn their lives around.
Absolutely.
Everyone
can. And because the thing is that I can sit with someone for 5 or 10 minutes and talk to them about their lives, and I can see their assets. I can see what they have to offer, and I can see their skills, and I can see you know, their gifts, and they will go their whole life without seeing it. Everybody has it. Yeah. You just have to know it and live it.
Definitely. I'm going to end on that, Paul. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about everything, and you know, all the best with your new film.
Thanks very much.
Please keep in touch and let us know how it's all going.
I will.
All right, and we'd love to have you back on again to talk about the progress that you're making and everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, guys, so we've got some time now for some tips, and I'm going to be talking about a few things to help you to overcome childhood trauma. Well, guys, Paul's story was incredible, and you know, I'm really glad that he came on to speak about what he went through, to actually, I suppose, show people that there is life after abuse. And even though he's still struggling with some emotions, you know, that even those things that he may be still struggling with today, that can also be overcome. He's come such a long way already. So I'm just going to, you know, with just a few minutes left, I'm going to give you a few pointers if you have been through some kind of childhood abuse, things that could help you. So my first point is to recognize what has happened. Now, victims of childhood trauma, they normally spend years actually denying things ever happened, or even shockingly actually blaming themselves. So obviously not your fault at all if you've been through anything like that. So the first thing you have to do is recognize that you have been through a very traumatic event and that it was not your fault under any circumstances. Because, you know, living with that guilt is very consuming. It really destroys you inside. So first of all, recognize it wasn't your fault and it happened, something that happened to you, not because of you. My next point is to get help and also not to isolate yourself. So some people, especially with the getting help part, they find it very difficult to actually ask for help, because in their mind, it's like, if I ask for help, I'm admitting to a weakness, and it's like I'm letting that person win. If I ask, if I need, for example, I need counselling, it's like they're winning because they've gotten to me, and they try to put on this tough exterior, but actually talking with someone is the best way to healing. And it can be to anyone. It could be to a trusted family member, a friend, or a counsellor, or maybe even a support group for survivors of childhood trauma. So it's also a very natural instinct to kind of withdraw from others, but this will only make things worse. So try as much as you can to still be around people, not to be on your own, because when you're on your own, all these thoughts start to fester in your mind and memories and everything. So it's good to actually get things out there, and that will be the start to your healing. My next point is replace bad habits with good ones. So many people that have been through difficult pasts, they sometimes turn to destructive things like alcohol and drugs or violence, as in Paul's case, to try and kind of cope with all the bad memories and the things that happened to them. But obviously this is a bad habit. It's going to lead you further and further away from happiness, away from healing, because it will not solve anything. So make sure you replace those things with positive things. So as in Paul's case, he started helping other people, he started helping children, he started to use positive words and actually make people, like especially children, feel like special and things like that. And that obviously will bring positive things will start coming to you, and you will actually feel better for that, because anytime you try to take revenge on someone, or you know, anytime you try, like as in Paul's case, he wanted to go and kill those people that had gotten away with what they had done in the children's home, he wouldn't have felt any better. He would have still felt bad. He says he felt guilty for not killing them, but actually he would have felt guilty if he had. So it doesn't solve anything. So make sure you Don't go down, don't keep that cycle going, the bad cycle, and start the good one going. And I know bad habits can be really hard to break, especially because you believe that they help you avoid reliving the pain and trauma of your childhood, but trust me, it's all an illusion. Naturally, as we said, it makes stuff much worse. So find the positive outlet and get things sorted out for yourself. And actually, if you want some information about some very positive charities and people that help people with traumatic past and any sorts of problems, you can visit our website, which is chrissybshow.tv, and there's a section there called Useful Organisations. And the fourth point is, to end on, be patient. So when you've been seriously hurt as a child, you do develop roots and behaviours that you might not even know stem from that abuse. So I have a friend, for example, that was abused as a child by her grandfather, and she thought she'd dealt with the trauma. She'd found a really good support group. She had her healing. She was happy and living her life. She wasn't even thinking about her past. But when she got married, she hadn't slept with her fiance before they got married. So they went off on their honeymoon, and the honeymoon was a complete disaster. She completely froze. She didn't want her husband to touch her, and she thought she was over it. She thought that she didn't have any roots at all in that situation. But then when she saw that, thankfully, her husband was very understanding. He was very patient with her. They worked through things. She got the help for the final things that were there. And she's very happily married today, and they had their proper honeymoon eventually. So that was great. But you see, sometimes you really need to be patient with yourself and work through things step by step. And in her case, maybe she kind of was shocked that she reacted that way, but it was another stepping stone to her complete healing. So honor your progress, no matter how small it may seem. It's the little victories that will eventually help you with the battle of healing whatever trauma you suffered as a child. Well, guys, we have reached the end of today's program, but if you have a story that you would like to share on this program, maybe you've also been through something like Paul or a different situation altogether, and you believe that by coming on the show you can help inspire other people and give them hope for a better future, please do get in touch with us via the website, which is chrissybshow.tv. You can also tweet us at Chrissy B Show. Also leave a message on our Facebook page of the Chrissy B Show. And if you'd like to email us, you can do so on info@chrissybshow.tv. That's info@chrissybshow.tv. And remember, there is always a solution, and total healing is always a possibility. Until next time, bye-bye for now.
Great experience being interviewed by Chrissy. Very emotional.